Hey guys, it's Jonathan McCormack. I'm an attachment specialist in New York. You can find me at attachmenthealinghelp.com. And I want to talk about how you actually heal. How does it actually happen? I've been to therapy, and I always want to ask, how is this supposed to get me better? I show up, I talk about my problems, and what? What's supposed to happen? But I was always afraid to do so. And you can ask your therapist, because I'm always curious what they say. I bet you they would say something like, we're going to come here, and I'm going to reflect back to you. And, you're going to notice your patterns, And also I'll be here for you. And once you notice your patterns, I'll help you change them. Well, first of all, even that I get is helpful. Like, I do get that. And having someone listen to you, having someone be there for you. And that therapist can even be like an attachment figure if they're good, Take a long time for you to bond, but sure, that could happen. But the problem is, basically what they're saying is like, this is the way you've been behaving all your life. So that's in your mind. You're going to be aware, which is fine, and then you're going to be trying to act a different way. So you have all these, you want to do this, and these two things are going to be competing. Sometimes this is going to be strong, sometimes that's going to be strong. That's fine, but that takes many, many years, And also, what evidence is there really that simply being aware helps you change? Because I've said that. I've said, I'm not changing. And I remember the shrink goes, yes, but you're aware, and that's half the battle, I know a lot of great therapists, but to be honest, most of them are awful. The question is, what's your modality, and how does this get me better? Might not mean it'll work, but at least they know exactly where they're going and how it's supposed to work. So I'll just tell you exactly how, There's 3 pillars. So there's a couple ways to heal attachment, but the one I do is 3-pillar. One of the ones I do parts work in something called the 3-pillar method. The 3-pillared method is an attachment disturbances for adults by Dan Brown and David Elliot. And they studied everything. And they're like, you need 3 things. And it's not just these guys, everyone else. Well, I'll tell you, it's something called mentalization, collaboration, and then they came up with something called the ideal parent figure protocol. But regardless, you're going to have to use some modality to heal these 3 things I'm going to talk about. Will you do it this way or another way? The mentalization is fascinating. That just means thinking about thinking. And you wouldn't think that that's that important when you're dealing with like trauma and attachment issues. That's one of the most important things. It's fascinating. They had an orphanage, and these kids lost their families. And they found them, put them in the orphanage, and half of them grew up perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. Half of them grew up completely screwed up with a terrible trauma, anxiety disorders, post-traumatic stress. What was the difference? Both went through the same thing. And the big difference is, one of the things, but the big difference is, were they able to speak about what was happening? Did they have other people that they can talk to? Because that helped them make sense of things. If you have a story and you put it in a narrative, you know who you are, you know what you want. All the things, if you have attachment disorder, you ask, what do you want? I don't know. What are your needs? I don't know. Do you know who you are? I feel like I'm an imposter, But if you can fit this in the narrative, your attachment issues will be much, much better. That's one of the main things is mentalization. And Dan Brown has a bunch of techniques. A couple ways you can do this, Because oftentimes some of the attachment problems, they don't realize how their thinking is affecting the other person, Dan Siegel's all about this, He says, when we create a narrative of who we are, we link the past to the present so we can become an active author of our possible future. That's absolutely right. He says that making sense of our lives by writing a coherent narrative allows us to have a sense of who we are, who we've been, who we are now, and who we'd like to become. This is all incredibly important. One way to do this is with parts work, which I do. It's kind of the idea that we have different parts. It's just a way of thinking. You know, like, part of me wants to do this. Part of me wants to do that. Part of me's scared, but part of me would love to, you know, part of me. So say, I don't know, you ask your partner if she'd, I don't know, come with you somewhere. She goes, no, I'm busy. I'm going to watch TV. It's like, oh, you know, all of a sudden your heart starts beating. Maybe you flip out and have a panic attack. Not a panic attack, but something like that. What's really happening is a part of you, a little child part is popping up, you know, and the little child's part, oh, I remember this. When I was a kid, I reached for affection, and it wasn't there. So I had to feel panic to get me to glom on, to do something. So it's almost as if you have this little 8-year-old trying to handle this problem. And that's not going to work. So what you do is, if you want to do like the IFS thing, you talk to that part. You know, so if someone was saying like, yeah, I got this activated when she rejected me, I'm like, oh, how does that? Get in touch with that. Get in touch with that part of you that feels rejected. How old is it? I know it's a weird question, but how old is it? How old does that feeling feel? And they'll be like, I don't know, like 8 years old. And what's going on around that part? Well, the mother's yelling at me, I guess. Really? Do you get that? And all of a sudden that part narrates its story. And by narrating it, not only does it get soothed, different emotional responses, and healed, but it makes sense of things, you know? To a little 8-year-old, if the mother's ignoring, the meaning is that it's unlovable, unworthy. You want to change that. The semantic, the memory's still going to be there, but the semantic memory, the way you made sense of it, will change. So instead you want to be, yeah, mom's ignoring you because she's busy. She has things. Maybe she has issues of her own, but not because of you. That has nothing to do with you. This tells us nothing about you. You're worthwhile. Your lovability. Intellectually, we know that, but until you emotionally experience that somatically, for therapy to be good, it has to be experiential. You can't just think about things. You can't just talk and analyze. You need to give the body a new reaction, somatic. You know, go back there. That kid's flipping out, feels rejected. Now feel soothing. You know, feel being seen because this child's telling us its story. It's just one way to do it. That's a slick way to do it because it's very emotional. It's not just intellectual. The second one is collaboration, and this happens because you know, you collaborate. If I'm doing ideal parent protocol or parts work, I'm collaborating. I'm following them. I'm like, oh yeah, what's happening? And what does that part say? And what do you feel? Like, I'm really collaborating. And if it's good, they'll tell me their needs, and I'll tell them mine. I'm like, you know, is this good? Did this make sense to you? When I said this, did that make sense? You know? And they'll tell me, like, you know, I didn't like this. I didn't like that. This worked. This didn't. That's collaboration. It's two people coming together. So you get that a little bit. You get that a little bit, you know? And the third one is the ideal parent protocol. And this is making a new internal working model. By 18 months age, you already have an internal working model. In other words, this little thing that sets your patterns. This is how I act. This is how people are going to act to me. On and on and on. And by doing the ideal parent protocol, you're giving the mind a new model. Like, don't go off that model. What happened your first few years? Let's give this imaginary model. And you imagine yourself, the parents delighting in you, taking you places. But you have to feel it. You know, you can't just be like, well, I'm going to picture it in my head. That will do nothing. You have to feel, what does it feel like to be delighted in? So, because that's the anchor to the nervous system, to really reprogram it. So you get that, you know. So you got mentalization, you know, you got some collaboration, and you're doing a new pattern. This is powerful. Unfortunately, it takes a while. It takes 6 months to 3 years. People don't want to hear that. I know. I wish there was an easier way. I wish it was quicker. But so if someone asks me, how is this supposed to help me? This is exactly what I'd say. It might be incorrect. It might not be the best way. But it makes sense. I mean, I know. If you have, a therapist, someone else, or even a coach, a lot of times there's like, you're going to talk and realize things, and then you're just going to change. That's going to work. Yeah, good luck with that. What you're going to do is spend like 10 years with the guy and buy him a new boat. That's what's going to happen. So just like some quick tips. That's how it happens. But what can you do? Like, what can you do right now? The best thing, actually, believe it or not, is yourself. Practicing 3 things. Self-kindness, versus self-judgment. We're always judging ourselves. Notice that. And every time you're like, I can't believe I did this. I'm a loser. Practicing that self-kindness. Because that's going to help you be kind to your partner, too. Practicing mindfulness, as opposed to being over-identified with the thoughts. Like, this is what I think, and it's absolutely true. But be mindful, like, well, it's just the way I'm thinking. Mentalization. And then focusing on commonalities instead of isolation. That can happen 2 different ways. You could just isolate, like the avoidant. But also, even if you're around people all the time, you could be constantly judging them and comparing. This person's different from me. This. Instead, looking at the similarities, the bonding things, Okay, so quick tips. If you're avoidant, what can you do? Well, avoidants are very disassociated from their body. So one thing that's actually very popular and works well is for the avoidant to be aware of nonverbal signals. Some people look at avoidance and they're like, these guys are like robots. They're like emotionless, They're not. They have so much emotion in them. Truly, truly depths, a lot of sensitivity, but they don't show it, And for these guys, it's like, unless something's verbally, explicitly said, they ignore it, They just, it doesn't matter how obvious the social signal is, Their girl could be crying, and he'd be like, well, she was crying, but she didn't say she wanted help. I mean, she didn't verbalize it. You need to be an adult here, You need to, verbalize your needs, really. I mean, that's what it's about. It's like, okay, like she's not a textbook, So what they do, this is an actual practice, is you try watching TV with the sound off. So you're seeing all these things, and you're noticing all these nonverbal cues. This is so important, And we've all been there, you've probably been to like a rock concert or something like that. I've mentioned this before. And you're looking down, and you see all the people, and all of a sudden it becomes so obvious how they're acting. This person's acting this person wants to get away, this person's trying to get that person's attention. Because without the sound, you're kind of like looking back, or looking down, and you have this new perspective. Another thing avoidance could do is build an autobiographical memory. Again, talk to them, and they're like, I really don't remember what happened in childhood. I don't remember much. I don't remember my childhood. You'll hear that all the time. Okay, well, we have to start building an identity, because if you don't remember that, that's a whole, not just your narrative identity, but your emotional identity, where you came from. So part of that is writing down details of what you did today. A journal. It takes 5 minutes. Just write down what you did today, how you felt. If you notice any feelings, this will pay off dividends. And pay attention to any desires you have when you want to be closer to people. There's so many times an avoidant will be sitting there, and they'll be like, I wonder what happened to this guy. Hey, he's a nice guy. And just forget it. But that was an impulse. That was an impulse to reach out. If you're thinking about someone, just make the phone call. Just shoot the text. Avoidants often procrastinate. Someone sends them an email, they'll get back to them in like 20 days. No reason. They could do it right now, but it's just something about them. So pay attention to that feeling, wanting to connect. I do feel that feeling to connect. You can get in touch with that with novels too, movies, whatever helps. Carlos Andrade is one of my favorite Brazilian poets, probably my favorite. He has this poem, You Carry the World on Your Shoulders, and it reminded me of an avoidant. It goes, a time comes when you stop saying, my God. A time for absolute purification. A time when you stop saying, my love. because love proved to be useless. And your eyes don't cry, and your hands weave only rough work, and your heart has withered. Women knock on your door in vain, you won't open. You're all alone, the light is out. But in the darkness, your eyes shine enormous. Your certainty itself, you can no longer suffer. And you expect nothing from your friends. I've talked to a lot of avoidants. And that's what it's like, they're so out of touch with their needs, they have no needs. Women will try, but they just won't open the door to them. Why? They don't get anything from it. A lot of the women have said, my boyfriend's very avoidant. One of the things that makes me so nervous is he doesn't need me for anything. I'm constantly, why are you with me? Why are you with me? A lot of times avoidant can't answer, but a woman needs a couple things. We all know this. A woman needs to feel desirable, needs to feel beautiful, and needs to feel needed, just to feel needed. Someone needs me. It's so important. And if you're an avoidant, you will not let her do anything. I know a guy who's very avoidant, married. He has never let his wife clean his underwear. That's too intimate. That's too sex, of course. Children, okay. But let's not go crazy. Okay, let's not, come on, underwear, But it's just like, it's a weird vulnerability, and he just won't do it, So for anxious, or sometimes called ambivalent attachment, an important thing you do is kind of just cultivate the ability to name your internal emotional states. The name it to tame it. Just describing what you feel, and don't explain it. This happens with anxious people. They'll be like, I'm like, oh, so how you feeling? I'm feeling pretty nervous. I just talked to my dad. I got this nervous feeling. Yeah. And then they'll launch into an explanation, which usually has nothing to do with it. They're like, I think this is because when I was 8 years old, and this happened, and I was watching the news, and my father said this to me, and made me nervous. And actually, now that I think about it, and they'll go into this big thing, and all of a sudden they're way away from the emotion. The emotions, that's where we heal. But an anxious person, all of a sudden, will feel the emotions, and then poof, all of a sudden that intellectual part will come in and protect them from feeling that. Let's analyze this. That's a lot easier. Write in a journal. For an anxious person, you want to be able to use your left hemisphere drive to tell a logical, linear, language-based story. A lot of times with people, this is very anxious or ambivalent, their narratives are completely emotional driven. Like there's an emotional logic, but like, why did he say this? Why did you say that? And instead of giving like, well, I think he was thinking this. They'll just give an emotional answer. Why did you do this? Angry. Yeah. What are you angry? Why are you feeling angry? What thoughts were coming up? But it's not, they don't do that. And so what you want to do is pay attention when your attachment system goes into overdrive. That happens, when you start getting panicked all of a sudden, and then you might lose control. So like, stop. Focus on your internal state. Calm, As far as disorganized attachment, best thing you can do is keep a journal. Write about the times you feel triggered, and times you feel your internal world feels a little fragmented. I talk to a lot of disorganized, and this is the conversation every week. So how was your week? Well, I was really anxious. I felt a lot of panic. Oh, when was that? I don't know. Was it, were you talking to a friend? Were you on this? I don't know. Do you remember the last time you felt that way? Not this week, but just, do you remember any time you ever felt panicked? Do you have a specific memory? Not really. A lot of times, no. Some that's defensive, but some that's just not how they think. So they're not. So it's so important that when you feel triggered, you write down what is happening. I'm with this person. And you make the connection. That's the big plate for disorganized. If you do investigate your past, you could use the RAIN approach, RAIN. Recognize the trauma, right? Accept it. Accept that it's not resolved. Be like, wow, this is really messed up. But that's okay. It doesn't have to be resolved. That's okay. Investigate it, just look at it with an open mind. And you don't have to identify with it. This happened to me. That's why I am this. My parents did X. That's why I am a depressive. You don't have to identify so deeply. Maybe that's why you have acted that way. Maybe, But that doesn't mean you have to continue. That doesn't mean the future will be like that. And finally, for all these is, sift. Pay attention to your sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. Because oftentimes, especially like avoidance, sensations, feelings, thoughts, they have those. They don't have sift. They have images and thoughts sometimes. That's all they have. But you want a full shift. If you want to shift the things inside you, it's pretty clever shift, man. That's why actually it's sift, not shift. Okay, I can make that slightly more clever. And so those are kind of basic things. If you practice them, or for weeks and months, they'll become a habit. And that's great. If you do that, that can be something. For a deeper level, though, you're going to want to find someone who does this. But anyway, thank you guys for listening to me. If you have any questions or just thoughts on this, I'd appreciate it if you kind of left a comment. Thank you. Bye.